She's an awful character. Just a device to show Big Boss's origins initially.
She honestly felt like another character to kill to me. Also,
by inventing
he's just barely a character.
As of recently, I've been trying to deep dive into video games I typically don't play and stray away from multiplayers, and I came across Metal Gear. So far, I've beaten the first, second, and third game, as well as Revengeance. And so far, out of all those games, I think the third one is my favorite. Although Revengeance has really good gameplay, the third one's characters and storytelling is unmatched. And this video specifically is completely dedicated to one character from the third game. And in my opinion, so far, the best written character in all of Metal Gear. And that character is the boss. No, literally, like, their name is the boss. And honestly, when I first started playing the game, I didn't expect myself to like the boss as much as I do. But as the story progressed and her character unraveled, I started growing attached. Her writing is absolutely phenomenal, and dare I say, one of the best written female characters in all of video games. In a lot of video games, female characters feel like they're thrown into games to just have them there. A lot of times they're thrown into games as just a basic guide or a basic villain. And worst of all, they're just sometimes thrown in there for the pure fact of fan service. You have incels and losers that just want to see boobs all the time. And since the developers know it's going to sell, they pander and they throw it into the game. And although in Metal Gear it is guilty of some of these things, for the boss it isn't like that. She's a completely unique character with unique characteristics. Her writing is unlike any other character within the series, and her character doesn't suffer from removing any of her feminine characteristics. Rather, they embrace a lot of them. Within video games, they typically just make a buff, strong woman and they say, hey, you want a strong character? Here you go. And despite not needing to make her a physically strong woman, they still do so. But they do it in a manner that other video games don't. They still keep all of her other qualities, and her being strong is just added on to her character. I can go on to talk about how video games struggle to write well-written women, especially due to toxic masculinity within gaming environments, but that'll be a video for a different time. But for now, I'm going to give a rough timeline of what she's done and what kind of character she is.
Listen to me, Jack. Just because soldiers are on the same side right now doesn't mean they always will be. Having personal feelings about your comrades is one of the worst sins you can commit. Politics determine who you face on the battlefield. And politics are a living thing. They change along with the times. Yesterday's good might be tomorrow's evil.
The boss was born in 1922 as the daughter of one of the original high-ranking members of the Wise Men's Committee, and then later grew up in care of the philosophers. She learned from her father the most forbidden secrets of the philosophers, and as a consequence, the shadowy organization arranged for her death. In 1941, during World War II, the boss was invited to the SAS as a special advisor, which resulted in the creation of Life Force and the original L Detachment. There she met David O., with whom she later formed the 22nd SAS Regiment with. She also participated in many snatch missions, in which she had to capture important officers without killing them. The incidents later served as the basis for her development in close quarters combat. On December 30th, 1941, she and Zero lost a close friend who had served under her in Life Force. Zero delivered his SAS wing dagger pin to her, and she continued to keep it with her, right up until her inevitable death. In 1942, the boss, then known as the Joy, founded the Cobra Unit, which consisted of herself, the pain, the fear, the end, the fury, and the sorrow. They participated in many special operations during World War II, contributing heavily to the Allied forces' victory. Likewise, she was also trained in sniping by the end. The entire Cobra unit looked up to her as a mother and leader, and she formed a close relationship with the Sorrow. The boss became a legendary soldier and was considered by many to be the mother of America's Special Forces. In 1943, the boss was ordered to infiltrate the Alamos and assassinate one of the Manhattan Project scientists, John von Neumann, under the belief that he was a Nazi spy, and make it seem like his death was accidental. But just before the operation, she found out that she was pregnant by the Sorrow. She proceeded with the mission as planned, though she ended up blowing her cover due to being distracted by her pregnancy. Though she avoided a bullet aimed for her gut, she received a graze to her side of her brain and would put her into a coma. This lasted for about 3 to 6 months. The boss made a complete recovery, theorizing that her body may have willed her to live to keep the child. She grew to regret failing the mission, even after it transpired that Newman, being a spy, was actually Soviet misinformation to sabotage the Manhattan Project. The boss felt that his living resulted in the Cold War, which made her partially responsible as well. During the D-Day landings at Normandy, the boss and her Cobras were sent on a mission to destroy several V-2 rocket installations near Juno Beach. It was there that she gave birth to her and the Saros child, on the battlefield. Going into labor after being shot in the gut, the C-section required in the chaos left her with a snake-shaped scar on her torso. She gave birth to a baby boy, though he was soon taken away from her by the philosophers. In 1947, 2 years after the end of the war, the boss disbanded the Cobra unit due to the tensions between the philosophers. Afterwards, the boss began participating in secret projects run by the US government. On November 1st, 1951, the boss was involved in atomic testing at the Nevada desert, where she was exposed to radiation and rendered infertile. It was around this time that she first met a 15-year-old John, aka Jack, that being Snake, and was drawn to him due to sharing similar experiences. She spent nearly a decade with John, training him as her disciple, and developing the tactics of close-quarters combat. John claimed that because of his training, part of him belongs to the boss. During 1957, she was also invited to the newly instated Halo School at the JFK Special Operations Center at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and was also responsible for the development of the Halo jump. The boss was forced to leave Jack when she was assigned a new top-secret mission by the president on June 12, 1959, involving recruiting Russians who were against the new single-party regime in Moscow to steal and sabotage various space projects and possibly directly become involved when necessary. However, the CIA disagreed with this and refused to help, forcing her to utilize the philosopher's spy channels for the first time to accomplish it. She managed to succeed in placing a sleeper agent to recruit them, and the CIA took over, namely to take all the credit, and the boss didn't mind. However, late into the year, the boss discovered some discrepancies relating to the Soviet blueprints that their sleeper agent was sending, namely in regards to the Sputnik 5, where there was an injection pod. She tried to report her findings to the CIA and get them to investigate, but they ignored her, thinking she wanted to regain her glory. She ended up infiltrating the Soviet Union without any official support, and infiltrated the OKB-1 research facility. She discovered that not only had her sleeper agent defected to the Soviet Union entirely, but also that the reason he did so was because the CIA was pocketing a large amount of his paycheck, and that the injection pod on the Sputnik 5 was actually an injection seat for human personnel. She reported her findings to NASA, which resulted in the CIA blaming the boss for everything that went wrong to cover up their own failures. Later on, the boss was chosen for participation in the Mercury Project, and met Strangelove for the first time, who was assigned to the Mercury Project as a key staff member. She was sent to space on a mission to acquire data on how well the human body would cope in such conditions, but during which radiation was inevitable. She unofficially became the first American in space, and seeing the Earth from above sparked her dream of uniting the world as one. Unfortunately, as she returned to Earth from her flight on April 12, 1961, the addition of a window caused her re-entry capsule to veer off course and crash land in the ocean, resulting in the boss being thrown from the capsule and severely burned by both the cosmic radiation and the heat of re-entry. Shockingly, the boss did survive, but she was hospitalized as a result, and she and Strangelove never saw each other again. The injuries sent the boss into another deep coma for 6 months. The military covered up the accident by claiming that the boss took part in the CIA's botched Bay of Pigs invasions in Cuba. The boss recovered, but the current administration resented the fact that the Russians had widely publicized successful spaceflight, while the boss's injuries and crash landing forced the United States to cover up their own experimental spaceflight, despite the fact that she was the first person in space. The boss had used philosopher contacts outside of Russia to place her own spy in 1959. But once Soviet philosophers discovered the spy, no branch of the philosophers was willing to help her. The Soviets decided to send in the Tsaro, the boss's former lover, who had returned to the Soviet Union after being disbanded from the Cobra unit. Unaware that the boss was involved, the Tsaro successfully turned the spy into a double agent. In 1962, she was sent on a mission to eliminate the Tsaro. Technically, the objective was only one of them was to come out alive. The philosophers forced them to participate in the task by threatening to kill their child if they both survived. The boss and the Sorrow met on top of a bridge and discussed what they should do. Ultimately, they agreed that the Sorrow should be the one to die. The boss shot him through the left eye. However, the Sorrow, being a powerful medium and psychic, returned to the dead 2 years later as a spirit. In late 1962, a former SAS associate of the boss, Major Zero, reached out to her and invited her to form a new CIA unit with him, called Fox.
A soldier has to follow whatever orders he's given. It's not his place to question why, but you're looking for a reason to fight. You are a natural-born fighter, but you're not quite a soldier. A soldier is a political tool, nothing more. That's doubly true if he's a career soldier. Right and wrong have no place in his mission. He has no enemies and no friends. Only the mission. You follow the orders you're given. That's what being a soldier is.
In 1964, the boss, who still remained in contact with the U.S. homeland, was ordered to take part in a major operation to recover the Philosopher's legacy, known as the Virtuous Mission. In order to acquire the legacy, the boss had to trade her way into GRU Colonel Volgin's ranks. Utilizing the Philosopher's spy network, she was contacted by Volgin with the suggestion of defection, as well as learning the location of Soviet rocket scientist Nikolai Sokolov and the details of a secret nuclear weapon he had been developing. A month later, the boss participated in the Virtuous Mission. This is where she was reunited with Naked Snake. She served as part of the mission's control, headed by Major Zero. However, she removed herself from radio contact just as Snake successfully retrieved Sokolov from Rasvet. The boss was provided with 2 portable nuclear warheads, with the intention of handing them over to Colonel Volgin and gaining his trust. The boss also helped Volgin recover Sokolov before he could escape the Soviet Union with Snake's help. Before Snake was able to help Sokolov leave, he's met with the boss, who confronts him and throws him off the bridge. As he's falling off the bridge, he takes her bandana. Shortly after, Volgin, entirely on a whim, did something unexpected. Deciding to test out his new weapons, he used one of the nukes to destroy Sokolov's design, OKB-754. The destruction of the nuclear explosion whipped the government of the Soviet Union into panic. And matters were made worse when the plane that had been used on missions control for the Virtuous Mission been detected by radar, making it look like the explosion was an American nuclear attack. While the Soviet army and government called for retaliation against the Americans, the Soviet leader was willing to accept personal assurance that America was innocent and that the attack had been carried out by Soviet traitors. Despite this, he still needs evidence to convince his cabinet and the army leadership. As such, the boss's mission to be greatly expanded and revised. The CIA, fearful of the renowned soldier's charisma, arranged to have her killed in order to clear America's name, in a mission known as Operation Snake Eater, which Hawk Coldman had masterminded. Naked Snake was to be redeployed under the command of Major Zero, with orders to recover the remaining nuclear warhead and to extract Sokolov, to disable the Shagohod, and eliminate Volgin and the boss. Unknown to Snake, however, he was also meant to act as a way for the boss to get the Philosopher's legacy, smuggled out of Volgin's custody and into the hands of the American government. Continuing to act as a traitor to America, the boss would allow herself to be assassinated by her beloved protege. Understanding that she had to give her life and eternally sacrifice her reputation for her country in order to save the world from nuclear war, the boss confronted Snake shortly after he made landfall and got into a close-quarters combat fight with him, with the apparent purpose of discouraging him from continuing his mission. In reality, she had used the opportunity to plant a transmitter on his person so she could track his movement and subtly help him throughout his mission. While maintaining Volgin's trust, one by one, Snake killed off the remaining members of the Cobra unit. In addition, the boss almost had her cover blown after Volgin discovered the transmitter, and when she became hesitant upon ordering to cut Snake's eye out while he was being tortured. However, Volgin's attention became focused on Tatiana when she prevented the boss from performing the act, which also drew Major Ocelot's suspicions. Following Snake's torture, she shot him in the leg with a fake death pill, and then slipped a single-action army she confiscated from Ocelot into Snake to provide him with a potential means of escape, as well as a means to defend himself. After Snake defeated Volgin and destroyed Sokolov's Shagohod with the help of Eva, the boss waited with the last portable nuclear warhead in a field of white flowers for Snake. There, she reminded him his duty as a soldier. Prior to engaging him in his final duel, she also described to him the perceived betrayal of the Cuban exile in the Bay of Pigs as an example of the US government's questionable policies. To ensure Snake would carry out his mission, the boss radioed Russian fighters to begin bombing, which was only 10 minutes away. The boss fought Snake with the intent to kill him. After beating her, she eventually collapsed from Snake's ongoing attacks. Despite engaging with the intent to kill, the boss continuously compliments Snake's growth throughout the battle, as she had expected Snake to prevail and kill her. After falling at the hands of her former disciple, the boss passed a microfilm containing the philosopher's legacy to him, asking him to keep it safe. She then handed him her weapon, asking him to finish her off, which Snake hesitantly did. The boss's horse approached her body, mourning her passing, while in the distance, Snake witnessed the spirits of the boss and the sorrow fade away. Prior to her death, the boss explained part of the truth of her mission to Eva, who later informed Snake of this. She also made Eva and Ocelot promise to not kill Snake, nor aid in killing him. In the end, she had left everything in the hands of Snake. The boss's grave was later placed in Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia. Snake would arrive later to pay his respects to her by leaving a bouquet of the flowers they fought in and the patriot she gave him by her grave. Despite her officially being labeled as a traitor and a war criminal, with the intention of her being remembered that way as part of her final mission, her epithet on her grave marker read, "In memory of a patriot who saved the world."
People aren't the ones who dictate the missions.
Then who does?
The times. People's values change over time, and so do the leaders of a country. So there's no such thing as an enemy in absolute terms. The enemies we fight are only enemies in relative terms, constantly changing with the times. As long as we have loyalty to the end, there's no point in believing in anything, even in those we love.
The boss, as her original codename suggests, found joy in battle. However, when she went to space, her view on war changed. She believed that there was more to life than the Cold War, recognizing how pointless the conflict between the United States and the Soviet Union was. As such, she longed for a world that would be united, in which people would respect each other as human beings, as opposed to remaining in constant conflict. This was despite the fact that she herself was a soldier. Ever since failing her mission in 1943, the boss had decidedly blamed herself for the atomic bombing of Nagasaki and the rise of the Cold War, having thought in retrospect if she succeeded her mission, the Cold War might have never happened. Because of this, she would go on to dedicate her life to her country and its faults based on what she felt was a conflict that she brought upon the world. The boss would go on to maintain a strong sense of loyalty to her country as a soldier. Her loyalty was so great that she allowed the government to use her ruthlessly and knowingly had her killed by her own apprentice. Despite this, she was not blinded by her loyalty to the extent that she didn't know how soldiers were used. As she mentioned to Naked Snake when they re-encountered each other after 5 years, her unrelenting loyalty was ultimately what led to her death, having purposely suppressed her own ideals and personal feelings for many years as part of her penance. As her idealistic notions were condemned and feared by her superiors, she allowed herself to die, hoping that Snake would learn the truth of her tortured life, so that he may learn from her mistakes and live a normal life dedicated only to himself. Though she believed that the philosophers had grown far too corrupt to be redeemed, she clung to what little hope she had that her sacrifice would somehow help in uniting the rest of the world. She also predicted that America and Russia would no longer remain enemies in the 21st century. Her charisma was so strong that it influenced the very creation of the Patriots, and was among the reasons she was killed. Eva herself had believed the 21st century could have turned out very different if she survived Snake Eater. Possessing great wisdom in warfare, she was a fierce soldier that sparked fear and admiration among her enemies, colleagues, and allies. Although she held a calm and collected demeanor, she possessed such strong and overbearing presence that Vulcan was intimidated by her whenever she questioned his mistrust towards her. Despite the Joy being her former codename, the boss rarely smiled during the events of Operation Snake Eater. In contrast, her lover, the Sorrow, always smiled during his encounters with Naked Snake, with not one occasion where there was a frown on his face. The boss's maternal instincts are a recurring motif, and as such displays actions such as caring caring and protecting Eva, knowing full well of her treacherous nature, and openly chastising her son Ocelot for actions perceived as reckless or impulsive. I didn't explain this earlier, by the way, but Ocelot actually turns out to be the biological son of the boss that was taken away from her by the philosophers. She also had deep care and affection for her finest disciple, Naked Snake, and made this clear many times during their final duel, commenting proudly on his personal growth. As a subtle indicator of Snake's growth, the boss engages Snake in CQC several times during their encounters, and each time he fares better and better. Initially, she beats him into the ground, but by the time of their final battle, he effectively counters every single one of her attacks, that being the primary way of defeating her. The boss cared for Naked Snake, so much so that after they went their separate ways, the boss found a new apprentice. She would often talk to Strangelove as if she was Naked Snake himself. She also protected Snake during Operation Snake Eater from Ocelot and Eva by making them promise not to kill him, and she instructed Eva to tell Snake the truth behind her final mission. The boss used to smoke cigars but quit sometime prior to the Virtuous mission. Although the boss scolded Naked Snake for wearing her bandana during Operation Snake Eater, demonstrating his inability to let go of the past, she was really somewhat happy in her heart. The boss had a large snake-shaped scar that ran across her upper torso as a result of the C-section I mentioned earlier. The boss likened her remaining sense of pain to that of a snake slithering across her body. And to finish up the video, I want to talk about the location of the bosses and Naked Snake's fight, and the symbolism of the flowers they fight in. The white flowers, officially named Orinthogalium, also known as Star of Bethlehem, the flower represents purity and life. But also, in the very beginning, the flower was envisioned as a field of sunflowers by director Kojima, signifying a field where life cycles death and rebirth. A plant to produce the next generation must blossom flowers to produce seeds, meaning when a flower blossoms, it's nearing its death. After its death, the seeds it left behind will grow into the next generation, and to replace the previous generation that died there. The boss, much like Orinthogalium and the sunflower, represents life, death, and rebirth.
I can't, but I would. I shouldn't, but I should. Cause it feels so good. Cause it feels so good. What you want me to do? I had it all to lose, but did it for you. But did it for you. All I wanted to say is do what you may, not what you should, you want. Cause I do what I want. I had so much to lose, but did it for you, but did it for you. Girl, I did it for you, I did it for you, I did it for you.